Hello, hello. Hi everyone, how are you guys? What's going on? So last week we touched on an idea of maintaining balance in what we call the circuit. We said that everyone has an individual circuit that you maintain balance in your life, and you play a role in a collective circuit or a collective balance or scale in which it's possible to be maintained balance. You add up all of the balances and that creates a collective balance. So today we're going to be talking about the Tikkun process. This is the most important subject of Kabbalah, of Torah, of Judaism, Tikkun. So the word Tikkun is a Hebrew word meaning amending or fixing or correcting. It's like something has been flawed, and Tikkun means you're here to correct that flaw. So similar to the circuits we were talking about, everyone has an individual tikkun, like a personal tikkun or correction process that you have to make for yourself. And then there's also a collective tikkun that we all share in common. Every generation has a tikkun that they've come together to do something as a collective, as a global community. So that's called a collective tikkun or a collective correction. And we can figure that out using Kabbalistic astrology. What is our collective tikkun? Because we are all living in a time period, we are a generation. So what is our tikkun, our collective tikkun? Not individual, but as a global society. So our generation, something in astrology, Pluto is in Sagittarius. I'm not going to go into depth of what that means and all the signs, but basically what it means is, according to Kabbalistic astrology, Pluto is considered to be a planet, and it shows how you want to reflect on the world. So just the simplified version, our generation is more about spiritual change and evolution. I know it doesn't seem like it, but you do hear people saying like, I'm more spiritual, or rather than saying I'm religious. And that's actually something that is dictated and talked about and being able to be found using astrology. That's actually something that is as a collective movement. Spiritual evolution is what it's called. We are the generation of spiritual evolution. Or looking to have ourselves be heard or seen or create some sort of reformation. We want change. That's really what it is about. We want change. So let's focus on the individual correction process. This is the most important thing. One of the areas that my rabbi's teacher, I have a rabbi, and his teacher, he used to focus on this exact area of people's individual tikkun and helping them find what it is. But the truth is, only you can find what it is. No one can tell you what it is because no one knows you as well as you know yourself. Unless maybe you're blind by some of your negative qualities, then a friend could help you or a rabbi can help you as well. So, I'm going to read a little bit about what he wrote regarding the tikkun. Every tikkun process refers to the person's correction, individual correction, that each of us have come to fulfill in this world. These corrections are based on negative, reactive behavior from this life and also past life. That's where reincarnation comes in. So that's why they say that sometimes good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to good people, because you're not looking at the big picture. Whenever you seclude it to your personal, individual life in this lifetime, things can look a little bit blurry. Why are bad things happening to me? I'm such a good person in this life. So you have to look at the big scale, what happened in your previous lives, and what happened that led up to this life, which resulted in whatever is happening to you. So, tikkun can include areas of finance, it can include areas of relationships, and also health. So our area of correction is any area where it's difficult for us to change. If we know that if we're conscious about our negative attributes, and we know that they have to be or they should be corrected, and that will help us get closer to God, help us get closer to our best potential version of ourselves, whatever it is, help you reach your spiritual height, then if it's hard for you to do that, which a lot of the time, all of it is hard, all types of positive change is hard because you have to sacrifice something that you've been holding on to for so long. That is something called tikkun. That's your individual thing that you have to deal with yourself and figure out. And you can use other people and get help from other people to correct that. But that's basically the point of life, is to find out what is your tikkun. There's a very specific tikkun that everyone has, and how do you correct it? And that you need a personal private teacher that can help you with that. So, our area of correction is any area which we're experiencing difficulty, like I said. So the problem that we face when trying to make corrections is that we fail to see the relationship between our actions and our consequences. So something that really blurs that, imagine that every time your dog used your $40,000 Persian carpet from Iran as a toilet, imagine it got slapped every time that it did that. You slapped your dog every time that it pooped on your $40,000 hand-woven carpet. Now, he does it twice, maybe you slap him the second time. Pretty soon he'll realize that if he does it a third time or a fourth time, he's going to get slapped a third time and a fourth time. So he's conditioning, or you are conditioning that dog to no longer use or treat your carpet as a public restroom. So imagine that every time that we as individuals committed a sin or did a wrongdoing or did something that makes us go backward or the opposite direction of our spiritual heights, that we got slapped in the face. What if we got slapped in the face every single time that we did something wrong that is not supported by the Torah? Something that's not supported by your Tikkun process. So that would be conditioning. That is not spiritual growth, and that is not how it is meant to happen, which is why there is time. Time. What is time? Right? Time, the way that Kabbalah explains it, or how it fits into our Tikkun process or the purpose of life, what is time? Time, you can think of it as an opportunity. An opportunity to do what? To basically correct your negative before you suffer the consequence of your negatives. So basically, what is time? It's like mercy. It's like God's mercy manifesting in this world. It's like time. You have time to what? Be remorseful, correct it, maybe repent, whatever it is. So this is something that we cannot fail to understand. There is universal justice. Every single thing that happens in the world, no matter how seemingly unjust it seems to be, there is perfect order in every single thing that happens. The Big Bang, the word bang is not a good word to describe the Big Bang, because bang implies randomness, order. No. There was perfect precision in every single spark or atom that was being expanded during that time period. Everything had like an individual hand of God being directed in a perfect direction. Or take the explosion in 9/11, for example. You would be a little bit crazy to hear me say, or hear someone say, oh, each individual piece of debris was directed by God. That's why this person died by falling debris and this person did not. Absolutely. That is all universally just. Everything happens by the hand of God and nothing is permitted without His okay. So, we commit a negative action, but we see no judgment to that action right away. The consequence might take a few months, it might take a few years, decades, and even lifetimes, which is why we can't look at the small picture, and you have to accept that there is something beyond this lifetime that you're here to correct. So, this delay gives us free will to change. This delay of time in between cause and effect, because consequences doesn't mean just negative consequences, right? We have positive consequences. Right. You call them rewards, you call them punishments, you call it whatever you want. Really, it's just cause and effect. You do and you get, right? So, this is the purpose of time. Time is like mercy, time is an opportunity to correct our wrongdoing so that we don't have to suffer through the spiritual debts that we get ourselves involved in. If we always receive the penalty instantly after committing a negative action, just like my example with the dog, we would change instantly. That is again called conditioning. That's not proactive spiritual change. So time was created to separate the cause or your action from the effect of your action. If, however, we embrace true spirituality, we're making a proactive choice to change without fear of retribution. So, concerning judgment, as we approach the end of times, we already have more than 5,000 years of spiritual evolution behind us. 5,000 years of energies transferring, people doing sins, people doing good deeds, all sorts of balances being imbalanced and corrected, and tikkuns being fulfilled and left to be fulfilled. So all of the last 5,000 years of spiritual evolution has led up to these final 2 centuries. These final 2 centuries, this is it. These are the end of days. So, not like tomorrow, but like we still have that time aspect. And that's what's really valuable, and we have to take more appreciation to it. We've experienced a millennia of retribution. We've paid a lot of spiritual debts, a lot of dues. We now have the chance to invoke a little extra judgment. Just one last amount of judgment. Now we have a lot, it's a lot, but this is our last chance. This is our last couple centuries of chance. Now, this will motivate us to correct ourselves much faster as we begin to see the consequences for our actions more quickly. So to the point of this entire lecture, to sum everything up, time is a gift. Time is mercy. Time should be taken advantage of to reach your spiritual height, and take that opportunity I think of it as like a miracle that you have time, that you're being given time. Because time is like that opportunity to correct that negative. Imagine every time that you did a negative deed, something bad happens to you immediately, right? No, you have time, so you have the opportunity to correct all your wrongdoings. And no sin, maybe there's like 2 that are really bad, but almost no sins are unforgivable. All sins can be forgiven, but a lot of them are harder than others. And you'll realize once you meet with a private mentor and you tell them what you did and they help you figure out how to correct it, how good you will feel to have a clean slate. We've all done terrible things that we don't even like thinking about because we can't believe that we've done them. If you really come to terms with yourself and realize that that is the one thing that's blockading you from reaching your highest potential, that's the one thing that's preventing you from growing in the way that you want to, in the way that you could be growing, then you realize that just correct that, transform that, get my forgiveness, come to good terms with the people that I have done wrong things to, and then you can have a very healthy spiritual growth and evolution process in this lifetime. And by the way, they say the lifetime that you grow spiritually the most is the one that you will be resurrected in during the time of Mashiach. The lifetime that you do the most spiritual growth is the one that will remain for the 1,000 years of heaven on earth whenever Mashiach comes. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity to answer some questions. What's your question?
Whenever you said, if you hit your dog, like you did this, do you think they'll bite you?
Yeah, that was just a metaphor to give an example. Like, this is a way to put it into human terms. First, God sends messengers to remind you that you have some work to do. They remind you very politely with a cup of tea. They take you to Starbucks and they say, hey, you have to do a little bit of Tikkun correction process. Now, if you don't get the point by that point, where he said it very kindly, he's going to send someone to your door and he's going to knock. He's going to say, hey, you haven't done your Tikkun process. You haven't even thought about correcting your sins. And then what happens after the third time is he orders John Cena to take you into the boxing ring, and then he goes boom, boom, John Cena, boom, the royal smackdown. That's like what God does. First he taps you on the back, then he punches you in the face, then he does a royal smackdown. Right now we're witnessing a little bit of slaps, a few slaps. Coronavirus, we have a few, I don't know. So these are the slaps. Now, we don't want to get into John Cena's boxing ring, and I don't, maybe you do. I don't think I can beat John Cena in a boxing match. So I think that I'm going to take the sign from the slaps, listen to the universal messages. These are basically God's way of telling you. That's how He talks to you, through the universe, through other people, through events, through text messages, even through seeing certain people. Anything that reminds you of your spiritual process is God's way of reminding you, hey, time's running out, it's time for you to step up your game and correct yourself. Does that answer your question? Yes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Towards the end of your lecture, you kind of talked about speaking to your mentor and saying how you can correct what you do.
Yes.
Some religions have like confession.
Yes.
What's the Jewish version of confession?
There's a similar thing to confessions in Judaism. So you have to find one rabbi, this is from my knowledge, my teacher taught this to me, you have to have one teacher that is your main rabbi, your main teacher who you trust, and you're not upset about telling him anything. You can tell him whatever you want because you know that he's actually here for genuine change and to help you positively. So in that regard, the first step is actually doing it. He is the first step. Telling him your wrongdoing is the first step. And it's not like he is going to correct it for you. No, that's your way of coming to terms with it just a little bit more. And it's huge. Thinking about it is also a way of coming to terms with it. Talking about it is a different level. Someone listening to you talking about it, totally different level. The highest level is actually doing the actual correction process. And maybe, you have to talk to him more in depth saying, what specifically do I have to do? Don't leave out details because then you're fooling yourself. And so it's hard. That's really, really hard because then the next step is actually going to the person that you committed the wrongdoing. That can actually hurt a lot. That can make people into all sorts of depressions and stuff. So you have to do it in a very healthy manner, structured, organized, and very precise.
If I may just jump in.
Yes.
Judaism, I disagree with your idea that
good.
Judaism has confession.
But that is part of the repentance process. Maybe for yourself.
Yeah, I was speaking more to yourself. It's an individual.
As an individual, admitting it is the first step towards repenting, because at least you put it out there in the world, and now you're able to confront it and go to the person. But what makes Judaism unique above other religions is there is no intermediary between you and God. As there is no intermediary between you and repentance with the person that you have hurt or committed a crime against.
Exactly.
So there is no intermediary. Confessional is more of personal or a psychological choice rather than a religious choice.
Exactly. So just to clarify, it's not a spiritual transformation that's happening whenever you confess. It's just to help yourself come to terms with that. Is that a better way to say it? Jacob? Perfect. Yes.
So you're talking about this whole thing. So you're saying that when you finish, when you finally get over it, you're like, I'm done with this, I'm amazing, you said you feel better. What happens if, let's say, 20 years later, you start getting back into it? Like, let's say, for example, someone who's addicted to drugs.
Yes.
Okay? And he finally gets off of it, okay? He stops doing drugs, but then 10 years later, he gets back on it, and he gets back on it much more strong.
Right.
Strong. How do you say that?
I would say that addictions is something that's totally different than one singular atrocity that you've committed. So I was referring to more so with the confession thing and like correcting your sin in terms of like, let's say like you committed an indecency against another human being, or you stole from your friend's house without them knowing. By the way, anything that you do that's a sin, that you do in another person's presence without them knowing, is 10 times worse than if they had known that you did. So like if you stole from your friend's house and they knew that you stole, it's better than you having stolen and them not knowing. Because the correction process is a lot more vigorous if you did it without their knowledge. To answer your question of addictions, it's a totally different system because that has to do with something like tests. It's an individual test that you have gone through, whether it's sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. That's something, I don't know too much about addictions, but that's something again that you probably have to talk to your teacher or even a psychologist about, someone who's specialized in addictions, someone who knows about what types of tendencies you'll be towards going towards. They have laid out lots of schedules on like, oh, during this time in your rehab stage, you're going to crave alcohol a lot more, you're going to crave this more, and they have ways to accommodate your impulses and desires to engage in those activities again. But it's difficult, and it's extremely difficult, which is why, if you're successful in actually correcting it, the spiritual positive that you're getting out of that is immense. It's like so high. The harder it is for you to change certain things, that means it's so much more valuable if you were able to correct it. Thank you. Any more questions? Anything? Everyone good?